Hello. I'd like to share with you this afternoon a vision, or part of a vision, that I've been experiencing for a number of years. The vision happens daily, and the vision I share with Mary, with Our Lady. She has been explaining to me over the years the way in which she herself, as the Mother of God and the woman of the Revelations and the woman of Genesis, is very much involved with a final plan that really is God's final plan. And she works very, very closely with God because she's his mother, and because she loves him very much, and because she believes completely in the vision of life and love that he has. I feel very fortunate to be able to share in this vision, although at times it involves a lot of suffering and a lot of hardship in many ways, but the vision is so beautiful and so hopeful and so wonderful that I really would be quite desolate if this vision left me. Because it's so beautiful, I'd like to share it with anyone who is interested in it. And although much of the vision remains at present private, there is quite a large amount that I can share with people. It's very hopeful because it is explaining that God has a final plan for the world that really is tremendously beautiful, tremendously wonderful. At present, most of us are living in the world in a way that's often quite despondent, because we're looking at the state of the world, and we're looking at the state of people, and we're seeing things that are quite horrific and negative, and very little that is as it should be. People who believe in things that are beautiful and loving and good are finding themselves at present quite demoralized because they seem to be making no impact. Love is being exploited. Love, in fact, has been stifled and crushed, and greed and power and materialism and envy and jealousy and all the negativity of life is really rearing its head to such a pitch now that life on earth is pretty grim, and people I'm sure, if they are like me, feel at times quite demoralized with what they're seeing. Now, Mary explains to me in the vision that I have that God too is looking at this situation, and God is not at all happy. But you see, God has given people free will. God has created individuals with many faculties, many abilities, many powers, and one of the most important, of course, is freedom, the freedom to choose. And at present, he is watching his creation. He's watching people choosing many of the things that are not good, many of the things that are not loving, many of the things that are negative and quite abominable in many ways. Now, because he is the God of love, and because he has created the world to be a world of love, a world of light, a world of peace, he has to, within his vision, finally see this happening as a reality. And Mary is explaining to me that indeed he will see this happen as a reality. He will finally see that the world has returned itself to everything that is beautiful and wonderful, magical even, everything that is loving and tender and compassionate, everything that is happy and peaceful and free, everything that is mighty and powerful and strong. But you know, he does need people to believe this. He needs people to believe that he, as God, he is that supreme being who has created life on earth and who is the very source of life and who is giving each individual his own life. He needs to see that people believe this and believe that this life that he has given them is given out of love. And so he needs to see people who will really accept the fact that love is reality. And these people won't be believing in a fantasy kind of love or a superficial kind of love or a love that they like to talk about and become very romantic or sentimental about. No, that's not the kind of love that God wishes to see in the world. He wishes to see a love that is real and solid and concrete and active. And he wishes to see people living their life very concretely and actively in this way, interacting with each other, to bring out of each other everything that is very good and beautiful and everything that is, in fact, wonderful. Because Mary explains that if people were living quite simply with this true belief in the power of love, they would be changing the world. They would be changing the world because, first of all, within their daily sphere, they would be living love. And they would be living a life of love with each other. And if people were responding to this, then the reciprocal movement of the love would be building up a momentum of love that is very, very powerful. And in fact, people would begin to be really amazingly happy, because they wouldn't be pretending love. They would be feeling love for each other in a very deep, real way. They wouldn't be wrapped up with their own self-love. They wouldn't be letting their ego dominate their understanding of love, which would make them really try to preserve for themselves a life that they felt was pleasurable and comfortable and happy and peaceful and free. They would be wishing to go out to other people to help them to feel this love in their life, to feel happy and peaceful and free and uplifted, and to enjoy life and to feel that life is beautiful and colourful and magical even. And Mary says quite definitely this is how God has intended people to live. And he has created people in his image to live in this way. He's created them to love and live with each other very simply, very happily, very peacefully, very freely, very joyfully, and with tremendous power. Because you see, if people were using love properly in their lives, God would keep injecting a further momentum of love, a further life force of love into the sphere that they were living in, into their own lives, and they would begin to feel really well, energetic, buoyant, resilient. They would begin to be full of vitality. They would begin to live life as it should be lived. Life would begin to mean life, and people would feel that they were living truly in this way. And the world would begin to change, and people would begin to change, and everything would suddenly become a paradise, a heaven on earth. Suffering would go, because people would simply be uplifting each other out of the suffering. Disease and negativity would go, because people would be concentrating so much on the positivism of life, the very life force, the Holy Spirit of life, and they would be synchronizing with this Spirit and building up a spirit of life that was really beautiful and splendid and dazzling. Now, as Mary says, we can see how far away from this reality we are. And she says very sadly, we are drifting further and further and further into the illusion, which is composed of everything that life really is not. And people are simply pushing themselves into hell. People are pushing themselves into hell of their own free will. So, this vision is saying that as the world accelerates now in this dramatic misunderstanding of everything that it is, because as we know, if we have any common sense, we can see that globally the world is full of hatred and full of strife and full of negativity and full of fear, because people are really shutting themselves off inside themselves because they have to escape from what they're seeing. What they're seeing is so desperately unpleasant, so desperately horrific, that they're trying to protect themselves from it. And so really what they're doing is providing themselves with a barrier from life that is really escaping in all sorts of silly fantasy ways from the truth. And Mary is saying, when we do this, we really are not understanding why God has made life on earth, and we're in no way understanding our own life, because God has really created us as individuals to achieve with him something that is very beautiful, something that is very splendid, something that is very magnificent, and something which is letting us feel fulfilled. He hasn't made us to go through life riddled with fear, riddled with sickness, riddled with disease, riddled with everything that is negative, so frightened that we're afraid to move, we're paralyzed, as it were, and we escape into a horrible little meaningless way of life, which just gets worse and worse and worse until we die. That's not why God has created us, Mary explains. But we need to believe this, and we need to increasingly find within our life time, within our daily pattern, not only to go out to other people and love them in a true way, in an active way, because that's why we've been made, but also we have to try to gather the energy to do this. And Mary explains that the way we gather the energy to do this is by, as individuals, finding our individual relationship with God, which is ours alone. He has created each one of us as an individual personality. He's given us lots of abilities and skills and talents and faculties and powers that are completely unique to us. No other person has been made exactly like us. We are individual. We have an individual entity, we have an individual essence, and God wishes us, while we live here on earth, to discover this. It's no good waiting till we die. He's put us here for a reason. He's put us here to develop our life in a true way, in a way that makes sense to Him and in a way that makes sense to ourselves. He doesn't mean us to be confused and fear-ridden and worried and anxious. He wants us to feel peaceful. He wants us to feel really at ease, a deep sense of peace, which means that we get to know Him very deeply and we feel confident that He's there. You know, He's there with us and He's strong. He's very strong and He's real. He's not a fantasy being that when we go to church or when we go to prayer meetings or when we pretend to be religious, we pretend that He's there. That's not the bond that He wants us to find with Him. He wants us to find a real relationship with Him, which increasingly lets us know that He is there and He's real and He's really all around us and within us. He's a part of us. We belong with Him very, very solidly in a bond that is absolutely strong. And we can keep this bond stronger and stronger and stronger by drawing on the love energy that He wishes to give us, and then we can pass that love energy out to other people and make them feel comfortable and at ease and peaceful. And then this would, in fact, build up a momentum of peace that is very strong. Now, really, as we know, people are very reluctant to believe this. People really are not believing in God as a reality. They're not believing in love as a reality. And through this vision, Mary's explaining that really if the world is to survive the dreadful speed up of negativity that's happening, then there have to be people in the world who are prepared to say, yes, I believe in love as a reality. And I believe that God is a God of love. And I believe that God wishes to bring the world back to a restoration of itself so that it can actually exist as a place of love and light and peace and happiness and power. Now, she says that God's final plan is very much linked with this. And in the days ahead, what actually is going to happen is the big separation process. A separation process which involves a separation of illusion from reality. Now, this vision is so much concerned with the reality that the focus has to be on this reality. So Mary is saying that people who can actually believe that love is important and they are trying to live their life in a good way, in a true way, in a loving way, in an active way, in a way that really does wish to give this love in themselves to other people so that other people feel better, and not to put themselves first and provide for themselves everything that they think they need and then think of other people afterwards, but to really go out to other people and make sure that they too are well and comfortable and peaceful and happy. And these people are simply close to God. And so Mary is saying that as the world develops now into a very negative eruption of all sorts of dreadful things, things that we're seeing now but which will just extend on a global level much more acutely. And she's also saying that because of the dreadful misuse of the ecology and the geology of the world, really energy is going to deplete itself very, very rapidly. And we know too that there are many experiments going on at present concerned with nuclear power, which really is a very, very lethal power. Now, as these things do erupt in a very negative way, Mary's explaining that we have to hang on to the fact and hang on to the belief and really believe that God is the source of all power. And there is no way in which God is going to let man meddle with his life force so much that he actually destroys it and destroys the world. So Mary is saying that in the days ahead, God's plan is to increasingly inject into the world his life force, his Holy Spirit of life. And increasingly for enlightened people. Now the people that she says are enlightened are the people who are simply living their life in this true way. And these people are at present scattered all over the world. Many, many people are trying to live their life in a true way and trying to find the meaning of their life and the meaning of life and the meaning of God. And if they sincerely believe that all this is bound to love, Mary's saying they really will have no problem in the days ahead in being enlightened to understand this increasing injection of God's power and energy into the world. They will, if you like, begin to function as they should be functioning, in a much higher plane, on a much higher level, using all their faculties and powers and abilities, their supernormal abilities, and therefore their vision will expand and their perception will expand and their understanding and cognition will expand, so that they begin to understand things in a different way. And increasingly, this life force that she's talking about, which seems very vague to us at the moment, the Holy Spirit, we feel in many ways that he's not tangible, he's not concrete. We don't know what is being talked about when we mention the life force and the Holy Spirit of life and energy and power and the power that's within us. Mary says we're so removed from our soul. Our bodies are really half dead. And we're going around in a half-dead state, and we're separated from our soul, and therefore we're separated greatly from God, and because our soul is really embedded in God's soul. And our bodies should be integrated with our soul, so that we're drawing this life force, this life energy into us. Now, God knows that we're very far away from all this. So as things develop finally in the world, he is really going to bring everything to a climax. He's going to really bring his life force into a massive, concentrated effort that will be very, very visible as light, as energy, as power, as color, as a beautiful display, a beautiful sphere, which is quite scintillating and shining and dynamic. And people who can see this will, as it were, be pulled into it. It will be like a magnetic field of energy that they will be pulled into. And this will happen in a very, very amazing way, because You know, people will start to have visions and dreams and apparitions and enlightenment, and they will use their intuition, and they will use gifts like telepathy and bilocation, and they will be moving on a different level altogether to link up in spirit with this beautiful dynamic sphere, which will be very, very visible and real to those who can see it. And they will be pulled into it increasingly to be lifted into heaven, because God is really bringing this sphere down towards earth so that heaven meets earth and a new world is constituted out of his love, his light, his power, his energy, everything of himself, everything of his being, which he wishes now to inject into the world to save those people who will simply believe in him. And these people will be lifted into this new sphere increasingly in an uplifting movement, so that as they move into it, because they are working together with each other in a loving way, a simple way, a way of communion, a way of community, a simple lifestyle which Mary says these people will have to return to, because they will be moving right away from a massive development of power in the world, which will pull people falsely into what seems to be a security, but which in fact will build up a massive development of warfare and a system of energizing which will be used for this warfare and will actually begin to annihilate countries. So Mary is talking very much about a need for safe havens. Mary has asked people through talks that I have given previously, she had asked people to begin to move towards these safe havens and begin to build them up across the world so that they would be functioning and people would be living their life preparing for this protected way. Sadly, nobody really has listened to this because people are waiting to see. People are waiting to see. Mary understands that this really is fallen human nature, and so nothing very much is going to happen until people feel that they do vitally need this protection. Through this vision, Mary explains that there will be a protection. The private part of the vision that I have is explaining to me very, very deeply and clearly, and has done over the years, how I will be able to protect myself from much negativity, including radiation. And she's explaining also that I will be able to offer anybody who is bonded to me in spirit a way in which they too can protect themselves. As such, I feel the need to let people know about this vision, and I feel the need to let people understand that Mary is asking them to move now in a very, very concrete way, in a very deliberate way, in a very trusting, hopeful, loving, caring, sharing way, in a way that believes that the final dramatic development of life will be for them something that really is very beautiful, very magnificent, very splendid, very wonderful, very happy, very peaceful, very free, very mighty and powerful and strong, because they will simply be using God's power to lift themselves and each other into this new world. And Mary explains through this vision that this new world will simply become a heaven, which will then extend into eternity, so that people are moved out of time and space into a moment of ecstasy that is so wonderful, so peaceful, so beautiful. And they will exist here knowing this peace and this bliss, because they will realize that they have fulfilled themselves, and they will realize that every other person has fulfilled himself. And they will understand that God's vision is perfectly fulfilled. God's vision is complete. They will bathe in this sense of fulfillment and completeness and wholeness, and they will simply know that nothing could be more perfect. So there we are. That's a little glimpse of the vision. For anybody interested, I hope to develop it with talks and practical suggestions. But you know, the practical suggestions are really very obvious and very much linked with you yourself as an individual and everything that you wish to offer God now in this final development. And so, as we close now, can we just say the prayer to the Holy Spirit, to God's Spirit of life and love and light and power and peace, and also the prayer to the Holy Family, that they will keep us very, very safe and protected in the days ahead. So, come, Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of thy faithful, kindle in them the fire of thy love, send forth thy Spirit, and they shall be created, and thou shalt renew the face of the earth. Jesus, Mary, Joseph, we place our trust in you. Keep us safe and protected, and show us the true